TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to, I suspect it could be the last segment of these impromptu shows, Brad, that we started a few weeks ago now when the Rock Professor was busy getting his bionics. So I think it's the last one, bro. What do you reckon?
Well, for now, I think, they've been fun, actually. So I'm sure we'll step back to them at some point. I was actually thinking, maybe every fourth week or something, we should do something like this. It's been quite fun.
Yeah.
Oh, it has been.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It has been a lot of fun and not too much homework, which is always a good thing because we've got to look after the Rock Professor during his recuperation period, don't we, Simon?
Apparently you do. It's but no, it's interesting. I've been if you've got three artists, I don't need to delve too much into Keith Richards' back because I know it, but Roy Buchanan's and Albert Collins, I've delved quite deeply in their catalogue this week. Listened to a lot of their stuff because I don't have I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a sort of in-depth view of Albert Collins, for instance, particularly, and I've got a couple of Roy Buchanan records, but again, I don't have an in-depth view of his career so much. So actually, it's been quite a lot of listening, but it's been really good fun to actually delve into somebody's catalogue and listen to a lot of their records and see what they sound like, how they developed and stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Brilliant, because that's what it's all
still
about.
Putting in the work.
We're living proof.
Yeah,
we're living proof, Brad, that we're not too old enough to do study.
That's right.
It's good. We do a bit of study, but it's kind of what would you call it? It's easy listening studying.
Yeah,
not hard work. You know what I mean?
Don't say that, Brad. Don't say that. You'll get the idea that it's blue and easy. Look, we've sweated blood, sweat, and tears over this research. Come on, dark, smoky rooms. Burning the midnight oil. Writing,
drinking lots of whiskey and
We've been drinking bourbon, whiskey, scotch, and gin. Yes, absolutely. Burning them in oil to get this show to you. Then we start going around going, yeah, I've had a really easy week this week.
True.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
We're going to do a shout out soon to you guys. But yeah, good to see Jim here in the chat. And speaking of Jim, one of our regulars here on the channel, and he's been a co-host, is a dedicated hardcore Cream fan, Brad and Simon. And we were doing some quick mathematics, weren't we, before the show? This album here behind me, Cream's Wheels of Fire, released this week in the UK. Simon, 57 years old. So happy birthday, Cream Wheels of Fire. Only 57, Brad.
Only.
Depressingly still younger than me. Oh, well. Look, less than 2 weeks left to go for the... Now I know that when I went back to see the surgeon, he said to me, have you named the collar yet? Not yet. Now I have. No, why?
Pain in the ass. What we've named it.
Yeah. Something like that. So yeah, 57 years old for Cream. First album from my research, guys. Double album to reach #1. So again, Cream breaking all the molds in that short period that they were together. And Brad, as you know, a big part of this channel. So a couple of these guys, well, all three of these guys that we're going to talk about, Simon, had some kind of connection to Clapton in one way or another too. So we'll be talking about that. But before we get into the show, Brad, you've got some news that you want to participate on behalf of the channel to our listeners and watchers.
Yeah, well, this week, unfortunately, we lost Mr. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. There's what can I say about Brian Wilson as a musician? I think you consider him to be, a genius. We're quite blessed to have lived in a period in life where Brian Wilson was part of it. Let's be honest. I mean, go back and listen to a bunch of Beach Boys albums, including, Pet Sounds. I mean, that I listened to that, and I'm hearing where a lot of influence came for the Beatles, and they influenced everybody. But Brian Wilson was a unique character. We should probably maybe do an episode on Beach Boys and get a little bit more into the history of how things turned out for Mr. Brian Wilson. But very sad news, and we have lost what I would consider to be a musical genius. Very sad news. 82 years of age.
Yeah,
for sure.
News.
So rest in peace.
And that period in the 66, to where he was producing Smile and those things, and really pushing the Beatles even to to produce Sgt. Pepper's, and it's a competitive thing there. It's an extraordinary genius, with his share of mental health issues, putting the old grand piano in a sand pit so you could feel the sand between your toes when you're composing and stuff. It's a lovely idea.
Certainly had, some interesting quirks, but look, to be honest with you, I think all things aside, I couldn't help but listen to a bit of Beach Boys this week. It was all over the place. It was all over social media, all over everywhere, and people talking about his brilliance. Paul McCartney, I saw a few interviews with him talking about Brian Wilson. I think I shared with Andrew this thing with George Martin, stripping back God Only Knows. That song in itself is a masterpiece, and stripping it back and listening to the basic layers and the melodies, and you can just envision what was going on inside Brian Wilson's head. I mean, he goes, I could hear all this. I couldn't hear the sounds, but I knew how I wanted this to sound. Obviously George Martin's like, well, you don't know until you get it in the studio, and then you get the studio sound. He's like, yeah, but I had the sounds of everything in my head. And so he was a force to be reckoned with, and obviously a huge loss to the world of music.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we also lost this week Sly Stone, of course. Another extraordinary maverick musical genius, frontman of Sly and the Family Stone, which I don't know. I mean, I'm old enough to remember them being around, and that mixture of funk, rock, soul, and psychedelic music was kind of was new then. It was it was a new genre when they were doing it in the very late 60s. Performed at Woodstock, of course, and but they, I think without him and that integration of those musical things and their message of racial integration and social harmony, without him, no Prince, no none of that 70s funk stuff, and Larry Graham and all the slap bass and all those things all come from Sly Stone and those extraordinary records. So, if you haven't heard him, Dance to the Music, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, Family Affair, are all extraordinary records and extraordinary, extraordinarily put together. And he too was plagued by sort of madness and mental illness and things, and had that purple patch, but never really recovered it since. But a huge innovator, who the Texan as well, which is who was shaped the sound of American music and culture going forward.
100%.
We mark his loss as well.
Good. And we got 19 people watching us, guys. Thank you for your shout outs
Good morning.
to these giants. Yeah, from my perspective, definitely when the Beatles were doing that anthology program, and I think Paul McCartney came out and said for the first time, anyway, that I was aware of it, that they were listening to the Beatles, and then the Beatles were inspiring the Beach Boys. When they mentioned that, and I became aware of that and went and listened to the Beach Boys again, you know, when the anthology came out, you know, 94, 95, like a lot of fans who probably weren't aware of that, it was like, another piece to the puzzle. You know, they were both influencing each other, and, you know, a good timely reminder that contemporary artists are influenced by other contemporary artists, Brad. At the time, I don't know what's happening now, but in the past, nice to see that relationship happening, eh?
Yeah, and through the years that the past, obviously since the Beatles have split, and you know, obviously the admiration grew and grew for Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. Like, you know, Paul McCartney's quite open about, you know, how much of an influence Brian Wilson's music was on himself writing Sgt. Pepper's. You've only got to think about a lot of the songs that were coming out around Sgt. Pepper's and past that album. You know, a lot of the harmony stuff, the melodies, the definitely influenced by Brian Wilson. Definitely.
Yeah, orchestration, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we should also say belated happy birthday to Alan Garber, friend.
Yeah, we nearly forgot. Thank you.
35.
Texan,
Happy
the
35th,
Texan
Alan.
teacher. The Texan teacher. Happy 35th again. Yes.
I'll tag him onto this video and say to him, go to the 12 minute
12
mark.
minutes.
Yeah.
You know, because he's such a busy lad. He's such, he won't sit through an hour and a half of us waffling.
Yeah. Very happy birthday to Mr. Alan Garber. Sir Alan Garber, as I call him.
The real rock professor. Don't mind me, the imposter.
He's a champion. He's a champion guy.
Got
a lot of time for him, and he's been on our show a few times in the past, and you know, just a champion guy. Love him. Love him to bits.
Yeah, it's great. Fantastic. Look forward to having him on the show eventually again too.
Yeah. He's got 5 minutes, Fantastic.
Well, guys.
Well,
here we
shall
are.
I'll do a shout out to everybody in the chat.
Yeah. Let's talk.
We can got what did you say? 21 people watching. So good morning, everyone. Good morning to Arvin. First in, Arvin. Well done. Phil Byers. Morning, Phil. Jazz Thunder 50. Jim. Morning, Jim. Nice to see you. Hope you're well. Albert Arthur Parsnips. Morning, Albert. Hope you're good as well. Johnny Heartbreaker as well. Good morning, Johnny. Hope you're good. Thanks for staying up. I know it's a bit late where you are. And Ellen as well. Good morning, Ellen. We hope you're good. Life is on the up for you. Gretch Zeppelin. Morning, Gretch. Good to see you too. That's everyone who's made a comment. So thanks everyone who's made a comment. And currently Arvin is #1 in the comment making part. According to YouTube. Yeah. Closely followed by
thanks,
everybody
guys,
else.
for jumping on. Thanks, guys, for jumping on. Obviously, you know, it's a show that includes the three of us and all the fine folks in the chat. And I've got to say this, if it wasn't for you, Brad, setting aside time in your busy weekend, and Rock Professor setting aside time in the morning for you to get up to participate on the channel and, you know, give us something to at least roll back and forth between each other, you know, we wouldn't have a show. So thanks, guys. And again, everybody in the chat for joining us, and also Brad and Simon, the people that watch on replay in the days, weeks, months, and sometimes years after we've put videos up. So thank you again too for picking our channel in the entire YouTube world to spend time with. Speaking about picking channels and places, I have to do a shout out to our All Things Peter Green Fleetwood Mac Facebook group too, which celebrated 10,000 members a couple of days ago, Brad and Simon. So, you know, that's a Facebook page associated with our channel here. So 10K members, Brad and Simon over there.
What an achievement.
Yeah,
well
and
done,
also,
Andrew. Yep.
Thanks to everybody new who subscribed to us. I noticed we're up to 11.3 subscribers, ticked over from 2 to 3. That's pretty good. And we've got nearly 1 million, was it? 1,200,000 views as well. So we've been racking up the views. So thanks to everyone who watched. It's fantastic. And thanks to everyone who subscribed. Please subscribe if you haven't.
Yeah, we love
a great salesman.
And we'll talk about some of our friends as well at the end of the show. But so moving on to this show. So obviously we've done Les Pauls, guys. We've done Stratocasters, guys. Now this week we're going to be talking about Telecasters, and it was a bit of an effort. Again, I have to give a warning to people. Why did you pick these three guys? Well, we had to pick three guys. So we've picked these three guys, and if there's someone else that you think that should be on the Telecaster Master list, put it in the comments and put it in the in the comments here, and we'll acknowledge whether or not they could be made honorary, Brad.
Yeah, Richie Kotzon's one I want to put in there.
Oh, 100%, brother. 100%.
Nobody's ever heard of Richie Kotzon.
Oh, that could be a timeout for anyone who hasn't.
I'm joking. I'm joking, Richie. If you're watching, Richie, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Yeah, Richie is, because we have reached out to Richie Kotzon. He is joking. We have heard of you.
Mischievous. Of course we have.
And Brad, well, you have to make a comment, bro, when you have your cup of tea after. You have to say, why didn't you put Richie Kotzon in the comments here, bro? And we'll have a bit of a laugh about that. But yeah, look, there's an endless list of Telecaster players, and we had to pick somewhere, you know, to start somewhere. And the first guy that we're going to talk about has been a central character to a lot of shows that we've done on this channel, is Keith Richards.
Yeah.
So before I pass it on to the guys, I'm just going to offer just a little brief comment here. Out of all the Telecaster players, Keith Richards, with what he does on his Telecaster, Brad and Simon, doesn't make that Telecaster sound like a traditional Telecaster. And I think that's one of the key things that we have to understand about this Telecaster instrument. While it sounds like a classic Telecaster, the mechanics, the design of the Telecaster is a great thing too, Brad and Simon, you know, that guys appreciate, especially guys that are going to be gigging 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. You know, you can bash and knock the Telecaster around. I don't know how many guys we've spoken to, well, I shouldn't say spoken to, that we've read over the years that talk about the Telecaster and its indestructibility, I suppose. But Keith Richards, for me, this photo there to your right, Brad, of
Yes.
Keith, is to your right.
Yeah.
No, that's not Keith.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That one. Below me. Down here.
Yeah.
That way. Yeah,
that way.
Yeah. From my perspective, you know, that early 70s period where Keith is, I'll put up a photo. Keith is playing the Telecaster. For me, is one of the classic rock and roll periods in history, Brad.
Oh, 100%. And I think a lot of it has to do with, obviously Keith was an open tuning guy. We all know that the Open G was pretty much Keith's signature tuning. But I think a lot of the tonality comes from the pickup configuration he had too, Andrew and Simon, with the humbucker in the neck pickup, and the bridge pickup is a single coil. And I always found that was quite a unique tonality thing that, that brought out that really wonderful rhythm tone that he always came out with. And I mean, I know he played lead guitar and whatnot, but I always saw Keith Richards as like the defining sort of rock rhythm guitar player, because he had that off rhythm thing going, and he also was on the beat. He'd go off the beat. Perfect example of that is when you listen to Keith Richards in the Expensive Winos albums and those live performances there. But all throughout the Rolling Stones career, I mean, we all know that he had a phenomenal rhythm guitar sound with that Telecaster. Very unique, like you said, Andrew, not the traditional, what you would consider a traditional Telecaster tone. No, and we can talk a little bit about that a little bit more after the Rock Professor has given us some of his thoughts. But yeah, I think that's a key thing. Yeah, definitely doesn't sound like a Telecaster. Simon.
No, I think that especially that humbucker sound, the humbucker in the neck, and the dual humbucker Telecaster from the early 70s is very much a follow-on to the sort of Les Paul sound of the 60s, isn't it? The dual humbucker thing. A continuation that was like clearly the five-string open G tuning is uniquely Keith, and he's turned it into some of the great riffs of our time. Did strike me that the three players we'd chosen all came from a slightly different world, they overlap, but Keith Richards is definitely a rock player, definitely in that sort of rock, clearly being underlined by the blues. Roy Buchanan is definitely a country, coming from the country angle, and Albert Collins is definitely coming from the blues angle. So we've got kind of the overlap, but three different genres. So I think we chose wisely with the three people, myself, and as sort of examples in slightly different genres, but. Nobody more influential than Keith in terms of sound and in terms of what he played, and that kind of the two things I always think about. One of which is the riffs, that kind of quite minimalist, feel approach that he always brings. That him and Charlie Watts, that kind of groove that they always bring, and and also the sort of the intertwining of the two guitarists, that particular thing that vision he has of the two guitars intertwining together, so that you particularly with Ron Wood, I think that those the roles of rhythm and lead guitar are blurred, and one of them's playing one, and playing the other, that very works very well for Keith. So I always think of him in terms of those things as well as the open tuning, but a master, and everybody knows that you need to hear cut one chord and it's Keith, don't you? And there's no higher recommendation of any guitar player than that bam bam bam. Oh look, there's Keith. Off he goes.
Yeah, on the channel here,
still doing it.
We've narrated a section in his biography about how he discovers the open G tuning and what it offered to him as a songwriter, Brad, but also the sound and tone, and how that changed the whole dynamic of where the Rolling Stones went from that period. So it's very interesting. I'll link that here somewhere on the channel if you want to go and check that out, because it's a remarkable piece of reference, for Rolling Stones fans. But Albert asks a really, really interesting question about the open G tuning, where he learnt it from. So in his biography, Keith talks about, it's a contentious subject amongst Rolling Stones fans, and we have Phil in here as well. So Phil will have an opinion on that. But he talks about how Ry Cooder showed him open G tuning, and a couple of years before that, Keith was using open E and open D tuning. But the story from Paul Trinker's perspective, when he was writing that book on Brian Jones, said, no. Brian Jones showed Keith how to do open tuning because he was doing Open G when they did a version of Can't Be Satisfied and I'm a King Bee. And what's the other famous, another famous early Stones song that was all done on Open G slide? So are you telling me, Brad, that these guys were really tight at the time, that he didn't know what Brian was doing?
He knew.
Of course he did.
No. I think we've been very, very clear to point that out on this channel, haven't we? That actually Keith knew about open tunings from Brian before he knew about them from Raikuda or later on. So
yeah.
Morning, Tony.
Hey, Tony. Yeah. So, and well, again, that's my view. You've heard it here. That's the Rock Professor's view, and that's Brad's view. And that's an unfortunate part of the Rolling Stones, this whitewashing. And I don't want to turn this into a Rolling Stones versus Brian Jones show, but it's just another little example of the whitewashing of Brian's contribution to this band.
Yeah, 100%. But back to the Telecaster thing. What he was using? Was it a 53 Telecaster?
53 butterscotch. Mick Corber is a 53 butterscotch. Tony.
Okay, so yeah, his 53 was his. So that's did that come standard? Because I'm not familiar with Telecasters too much with the humbucker in the neck, guys.
No. So when it was given to him by Clapton, just hold on for a second.
Yeah, because I've always
here's one I made earlier.
When it was given to him by Clapton, it had the standard 3-point bridge system, and it had the single coil Brad, and
the lipstick one. Yep.
Yeah, and around 1970, 71, that's when he put the humbucker in and discovered the Open G tuning at the same time, and realized the significance that whole tone, and where it was going to go, not only for, like I said to you guys before, as far as the tone goes, but also where it was going for him as the songwriter, because he realized, Simon, as he said, riffs, he was writing the riffs. He realized that part of what he needed to do as a songwriter was write riffs. And you just, we worked it out, didn't we, Simon and Brad? Well, Brad, we worked out what the Rock Professor was humming before, wasn't it? It was Honky Tonk Woman,
Yeah.
So it even transcends hums, Brad.
And you can't even play it properly in standard tuning, that song, no matter what people will tell you. Yes, you can. That's rubbish. You can't play it properly without the proper tuning. And you
can get close enough.
Well, yeah, close enough to rock and roll, but it just doesn't have the same effect, I don't reckon. And you talk about other Telecaster players. I mean, Keith Richards influenced the. I mean, we could do a whole nother show based on Keith's disciples. You know what I mean? Rich Robinson from the Black Crowes, Izzy Stradlin from Guns N' Roses. The list goes on. There's a bunch of them that really.
Andrew Walton.
Yes, Andrew Walton. So what I'm saying is that there, there's an abundance of players that were influenced by Keith and made a success of doing similar thing. I mean, open tunings for example, Rich Robinson is, Sting Me, that it's all open tuning, and, Twice as Hard. They're all got that sort of open G thing going on, which is very Keith Richards. So if people are familiar with those songs, that is. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah.
Yes.
It's a great thing to have your own sound, isn't it? And have your own style that you've developed over the years. So.
Yeah.
Nobody
Thanks,
more
Albert.
original than Keith.
I built this. It was a standard classic vibe. I routed that out and put this humbucker in during lockdown in April 2020. And a couple of years ago, there's a video on the channel where I've put this gold bridge on, where I changed that. And Brad, I just got a chisel, bro, and just chiseled it out. I didn't use a router or anything, bro. If I took this off and showed you, you guys would be embarrassed for me.
Hey, that's so Eddie Van Halen.
We're embarrassed for you with the mere mention of the word chisel. I was just thinking when you were talking, I was thinking, so anyway, I took my 53 telly and I routed it out for a humbucker. So I devalued it wildly by routing it out, but I'm Keith Richards. So have I devalued it or not?
Yeah. And it's permanently set up in OpenG. You notice there.
Yeah, with the low E gone. Low E, bye-bye.
Gone, bro. Gone, bro. She gone.
Yeah.
Morning mission.
Just gets in the way.
Ready. It's just ready. It's ready for Keith. Channeling of the Keith. Yeah. Any possible moment.
Yeah, God bless you. God bless Keith.
Fantastic, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Phil Byers says there's a new Stones album in the can being mixed in the next few weeks and out later in the year. Look forward to that.
There was a couple of posts a couple of days ago about that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because Hackney Diamonds, guys, that we ranked, I think we ranked that within the first week, wasn't it? Or certainly the first 2 weeks when it came out.
We were right on it.
Yeah. And if it's anything like Hackney Diamonds, which is darn good album.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, it's great that they're punching out records still. It's fantastic.
In the 80s, bro.
No, no. Do you reckon it would be? Have we heard any information based on the material? Is it spillage from the last record, or is it all new material they've written for it?
I spent 20 minutes trying to find. I asked questions on Facebook groups, and nobody knows.
Right.
Nobody's heard anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, either way, bring it on.
Still working. Well done, team.
Yeah. So certainly from my perspective.
Who's it being produced by, Andrew?
Don't know.
Is it the same guy who did Hackney Diamonds?
Don't know, buddy. No info.
Anyway. Bad.
Yeah.
No info. No.
So from my perspective, guys, when I think of the Telecaster and images, it's Keith Richards, in that early 70s period, which is a darn cool period for the Stones. And we can talk about towards the end, guys, we'll talk about some of our recommendations. But any Stones album, Brad, from Sticky Fingers onwards, is going to give you you can't go wrong, because he's playing Open G on 50% of the songs. So and I'm glad too, Brad, that you mentioned that he definitely set the pace for a generation of other guys to follow and appreciate not only the Telecaster as a shape or whatever, but certainly in its configuration that he probably pushed with that humbucker. Certainly, from my perspective, he's a giant.
Yeah, well, I think someone make a note of this. I think we need to do Richie Kotzen, Rich Robinson, and Izzy Stradlin.
Oh, you got it, bro.
On the next Telecaster one.
I think you've got to have either Izzy Stradling or Richie Kotzen, and you've got to have Muddy Waters.
Oh, Muddy Waters.
With his red one as well. Definitely.
Well, I mean, it's very very hard to pick. I mean, we can do plenty more shows like this, guys. 100%. I think we should definitely have fun of it. Whenever we're feeling like we've had lots of homework with ranking the track albums going over and over and over. Let's do a three player thing again. The master of the Telecaster or the Super Strat player or something like that, or Les Paul player or
You got it, bro. When we were doing the clap.
Sorry, we'll say good morning to Greg Roberts, Tune, and to Arvin and Nelson as well, and Mission RD. Morning, guys. Thanks for joining. Greg, what's happened to me? Just very briefly, I had a neck surgery and had a small bolt inserted between two vertebrae in my neck. 10 and a bit weeks ago. So I'm in a neck brace for another 2 weeks. But
Simon's nickname is RoboCop.
Yes. Yeah, I am. You remember the $5 million man? Well, I'm the $5 man. That's it. That's all I've got. Tiny bit.
You're the Terminator. I'm the Terminator.
Hardly.
Yeah. Brad, I remember when we were doing the Clapton show in regards to the 24 Nights Definitive Collection and the movie. You were especially inspired not only by the way that he was playing, but the way that he looked and the way that he came out on stage. So do you mind kicking off a bit of a chat on Albert Collins?
Look, Albert Collins, what can I say about Albert? Let me tell you, he didn't have the nickname the Iceman for nothing. He was the master of the Telecaster. He came out, owned it. He came out in those 24 nights, collection.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like he's an entertainer. And that whole generation of blues artists, guys, were what I would like to say, not just players, not just blues, they were entertainers. They took their job very seriously. I think they all influenced each other quite heavily, even down to Little Richard influencing them when it came to later in their careers, putting all the sparkle on the dress up, the whole bit. But Albert Collins, what can I say about the guy? You've only got to listen to, I don't want to name the songs right now because I know we're going to go through what we recommend people to go and listen to. But he was another custom sort of tele guy, wasn't he? Like he used open tunings with a capo a lot, and that was my understanding. And he had a stinging attack with his playing. The way that Albert Collins played, he was no one really played like him. And there's certain songs that I'll go through later that highlight his ability to he's stung like a bee. Saying that the Muhammad Ali saying stung like a bee. I reckon that was my explanation of Albert Collins's playing on that Telecaster. He made it sting. There was some fantastic footage of Albert on that 24 Nights, guys, and he's got a vibe. I love how he comes out. He's got the, his Telecasters.
Look at that capo. Could I say, look at that capo? How far up the neck it is.
Yeah, and he used to wear the guitar strap over his, right shoulder. Instead of over the left, just over the right. Just play real casual. His vocal ability, everything about him, he just had a real vibe. And in my opinion, he was, the guy on a Telecaster in that era of the blues. He made the Telecaster special. And a lot of blues guys using Telecasters now, heavily influenced by this band here, Albert Collins. Definitely a vibe. You know what I mean? He comes out, his hair's done, got the moustache, the little what I call flavor saver underneath the lip there. He's got the vibe. He just
100%, bro. 100%. He looks cool, and the open tuning, F sharp tuning, so it's really, really bizarre, isn't it, Simon? I'm sure the Rock Professor's got a bit to say about that. But also, Brad played with his fingers. Never used the pick, bro.
That's where that stinging attack comes from, and like you. I know we've done shows on Philip Sace, for example, and a lot of the times the way he uses his fingers on the high string is an Albert Collins thing, because he's a big fan of Albert Collins as well.
Oh yeah.
Like every blues player is. I mean, let's be honest, every blues player that's around, including us three, influenced by Albert Collins to some extent. You know what I mean? Some of his songs are embedded in the back of my brain. I've heard them millions of times at blues jams. I've heard them millions of times in my car, just on a blues shuffle, just Albert Collins. Yeah, like God bless Albert Collins, and his work with, say, Gary Moore and things like that. Like some of that stuff is some of his best work, which I don't want to spoil too much about what I think people should do when they want to investigate a little bit more about Albert Collins. But he's definitely the master of the Telecaster in my eyes.
Yeah, interesting. Another one of those guys who we talked this last week about, Buddy Guy. He was born in 1932, so he went through the sort of first phase of blues, electric blues, and he was 30 in 1962. So and then had a sort of that lull in the 60s, and then came back strongly in the 70s and 80s. With Eric Clapton and was one of those founding fathers of the Texas blues thing. With people, clearly Stevie Ray, Gary Moore, Coco Montoya, all those guys who he influenced and has played with. I think it's as I say, another one of those guys who came from the came from that sort of that pre-Chicago blues style, and growing up, and then moved through that electric thing. So I had a proper career and stuff through the 60s and 70s. But yeah, that kind of ice pick playing and with the fingers stuff, fantastic stuff, and uniquely Albert Collins. Jim said interesting. Jim said in the chat that in my research, he seemed to be tuning it to the F sharp. He tuned his guitar. I'm using a minor opening F sharp tuning with his capo. So I don't know. Jim said it was a D minor. I think. Did you, Jim? But yes, that's quite an interesting way of doing it, and then having to work out how to play it. But yeah. Another one of those great 30s blues players who went through. Hats off to him.
Yeah, his ups and downs through life as well, and like all the blues players of that era, they all had, and he sort of, like you mentioned, had a bit of a comeback after the 60s and that, and a lot of the, we should probably do a bit of a show on that documentary, Antones, that blues club that, was like a bit of a home to reintroduce these artists back into, and give them some credit for what they've done and passed on, to blues artists past them, sorry, or that were influenced by them. I feel like Albert Collins is one of those guys. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And, one of the classic things too about Albert, we spoke about Keith Richards influencing a generation of guitar players. This guy too. Everybody, anyone that's a contemporary blues player, if you read any article when they talk about any of their influences, and you mentioned it before, Brad, a shitload of them mention Albert Collins.
Well, I mean, he was definitely right up there. I mean, the thing that I find remarkable is when you watch, say, that footage on 24 Nights, Andrew and Simon, where you can see how humbled the rest of the musicians are to be playing on stage like with him. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it Clapton. He's just looking, going, he's in awe of the guy.
Wow.
and just and just sort of sitting back there doing his thing, or just going, my goodness, I'm playing with Albert Collins. That's how I would be anyway, and I would be feeling exactly that. And you can see it in the look on their faces. All the musicians, but especially Clapton, he's sitting there going in the pocket, just watching Albert Collins be Albert Collins.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. All of us made reference to that because we hadn't seen that before, and we were impressed by the way that Eric was sort of standing back. Yeah, good point.
Just leaving, and I mean that's what I call a certain amount of honourable respect. You have to. There's no point trying to outdo someone like that because they've got nothing to prove. They're just coming out and they're being who they are, and I love that. And I actually loved that about watching that performance with Eric. I thought that's how it should be. They should be turning around and going, nah, respect to these guys.
Well, that's why he had him, Eric, didn't he? That's why he had Buddy Guy, didn't he? And Albert Collins, and it's a paying of respects to the people who came before you. The people who influenced you. I think Eric's always done that. I think.
Even the album with BB King, Riding with the King.
Yeah, Riding with the King.
Yep, he sat back and just let BB be BB. And I loved that. Sure. That's one thing that I find that even with Gary Moore, when Gary Moore had him on, and we'll get into the songs and stuff like that with Albert Collins, but when Gary Moore performed and recorded with Albert, there was a certain amount of respect. There was no ego there trying to outdo them or whatever. It was like, no, this is Albert Collins, mate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Thanks, Brad and Rock Professor, for your contributions, and obviously everyone else, Tony's as well, and Johnny Heartbreaker in the chat saying Albert is GOAT status. Yeah, 100%. And I have to back the Rock Professor up too, because a couple of the videos where I saw Albert explain his technique, which is remarkable, he's explaining it to a couple of guitar players and how he tunes it, and he loves getting that high tension, Brad. It's one of the great things about having that tuning, that F-sharp tuning. You can capo, you can dance off the strings, Brad. That those strings don't move. They're and again, that contributes, Simon, to his technique, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that also 100% would obviously explain that stinging sound, and that those strings are really popping on that fretboard. They're really going hard. So
yeah. Well done. So, Rock Professor, Roy
Buchanan. Yeah, Roy Buchanan. I came across Roy Buchanan because when I worked in the record shop in 79 to 82, my boss Tony was a great guitar player, and had a really good knowledge of it, and Roy Buchanan's first album came in the shop secondhand, and I can remember putting it on, and the first track is Sweet Dreams, an instrumental first of Sweet Dreams, with these kind of extraordinary kind of using the volume controllers for swells and stuff, and it's a very beautiful thing, and I was very taken with it. I've got the album in my cupboard over there with my album. So that was kind of my first introduction to that sort of feel, and that use of the volume control, so noticeable on that track when he winds the volume up and uses it, and that beautiful kind of lyrical playing that that he could produce, fantastic. So I was really, really struck and really taken with it as a thing. I mean, clearly he had a sort of shortened career, really, because he died in 88, so it's kind of shortened up. But he had that style. I think that we talked about what Keith Richards, his open tuning and that style and where he got into it. Roy Buchanan had a sort of overlapping style, but he also had that country thing that he's playing as well. I mean, Keith does a bit, but Keith is not the overt country player that I think Roy, that kind of combination. I think of Roy with the jazz elements as well, moving into it, is make him an extraordinary, expressive, and and unique character player. But those influences that come through, and working with Dale Hawkins and Ronnie Hawkins alongside Robbie Robertson, pre the band stuff, was amazing. Came to attention in a 1971 documentary called "The Best Unknown Guitarist in the World," which showcased its astonishing tone and technique. Yeah, it is fantastic. I think it's on YouTube, isn't it?
100%.
I think you could. Yeah, you could see it. It's fantastic, and and then later albums where he blended blues, rock, country, and jazz, with great improvisation, and again that lyricism, that emotional lyricism of his playing on the softer stuff, and so I think as I said, that kind of his way of doing things was definitely pioneering techniques like volume source, chicken picking, and behind the nut bends kind of thing. So he's right in the forefront of quite dazzling technique and and moving the instrument forward, which I think still probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, and is deserves the term underrated, because flies under the radar a bit. What about you guys, Brad? Where did you come across him?
Well, for me, like Roy, I first thing I'm going to say is I do think he's underrated. Doesn't get the recognition he deserves. I tend to agree with you on that. But for me, I don't know. There was something about Roy Buchanan's music. For me, there was, a lot of what he does on the Telecaster is haunting. He's got a real expressive sort of way of playing, almost vocal like. He plays like he's singing vocally. That's what I mean by that. He too had a 53 Tele. Am I correct? It was nicknamed Nancy. Am I correct in saying that?
Yep, correct.
And yep. And so for me, that's the single coil neck pickup. That's how I envision the Telecaster, guys. And the Keith Richards version with the humbucker, that's a completely different beast for me. But that's how I always picture the Telecaster, and I've always only really ever thought he was a Tele player. There was a little bit of country there as well. The volume swelling, the stuff he did on that Telecaster was quite unique, and his own sound as a player as well. And for me, I couldn't really pick too many influences there in his playing, especially this week, listening to Roy quite a bit in preparation for this show. I'm thinking, who's he like? When you listen to, say, Albert Collins, you can tell his influences were his comrades that he was playing with. He was influenced by Albert King. He was influenced by everyone around him, and Muddy Waters, everyone. You could hear it in his playing. But I found that with Roy's playing, I thought he had a bit of his own style, more so than wearing his influences on his sleeve. Am I correct in saying that, guys? Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's just the way my ears are when I'm listening to Roy.
I think it's actually a bit more the other way round, in that he was the influencer, not the influenced, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't really think he ever really sort of, made it apparent that he was influenced by, hypothetically, by Jimi Hendrix or by, like you couldn't hear that in his playing. Yeah.
No, that's true. No.
Yeah.
I think sort of earlier than that, really, wasn't it? If you're born in 39, 59, you're 20,
Yeah.
And by 69, you're 30. You've got your influences by then, haven't you? And
yeah.
But yeah, But I think that, going through that, but as I say, an extraordinary player, and that influence on. I mean, clearly, people like Jeff Beck, Cosby Vender's Lovers, must be a tribute to Roy Buchanan, and I know that Gary Moore, Joe Bonamassa as well, spoken about Roy and things as influence. So, that influence of as I said, the volume stars, the chicken pig, and the behind the nut stuff, it's kind of in at the beginning of it. So really fantastic. But like a lot of those innovators, never quite gets the the recognition that he deserves somehow.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah, fantastic listening to you guys. Look, I rate the guy too. He's one of the greatest. I came to his music later than these other guys, to be fair. It was in a conversation with Carl around 2010. I had heard of him and some of his music, but I hadn't studied the guy. And you know what it's like, Brad, when you hear something and you realize, my gosh, why haven't I heard this? You just spend the next, I don't know about you. I suspect you're a little bit like this, though, because I've known you for a while. You just binge, bro. You just go for it, and you just spend weeks, listening to the guy. And I certainly did that. And I was interested in his backstory. And I think his backstory is, just as revealing and gives life to that music, Simon, that he plays, because, just an ordinary guy, came from a poor family, religious family, had his ups and downs with alcohol, started and stopped his career, and the demons get in the way, and it's tragic. And you can see his mum talking about him and his family members, and they don't know what to do, and it comes through the music. The Brad, you talk about this often, sometimes when we get together for these shows, and when these guys and girls are going through periods in their life, you can detect it, can't you? And for me, I could detect, a guy that was in pain, and the Telecaster playing the music certainly was a key for him to be able to function as best he could. He liked it loud, Simon. I've watched videos where guys said, that his reverbs, they were turned up to 10. And as the rock professor said, if you go and watch the videos, he uses his finger and he rides the volume on the guitar to get those swells. Long before, Brad, volume pedals, long before they ever came on the scene. So, and it was definitely that deft touch.
Definitely influenced guys like Jeff Beck. Definitely.
Oh yeah, bro. Oh yeah, 100%. And just and we, the rock professor talks about his high watt that he had. When we've all played through, a combo or whatever turned up to 10, and to control that on your volume on your guitar, guys, is takes skill.
Takes some skill, yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise you're going to blow everybody off the stage. And he certainly wasn't doing that. But just what a great guy. What a tragedy, Simon. What a tragedy that he couldn't have been around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, didn't last till he was 49 when he died. So
too young.
Pretty young, really. Yeah. And didn't start making records really until the early 70s. Of his own. But when I was Mission says that Roy once said that he was influenced by Johnny Otis's voice. So that's interesting. So that, but yeah. So as Tony talks about his mental health problems and alcohol problems.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, the other thing that struck me is that he's a good singer as well. When he chose to sing, could sing all right.
Not bad.
But, well, completely. But that and I think one of the things that I think sort of Keith has his own unique voice, but you know, Albert Collins is a great singer, and Roy Buchanan was a really great singer too. You know, they were the complete package, and they could do it all. I think Roy chose quite a lot to do a lot of instrumental stuff, but which maybe he maybe didn't like his voice too much or whatever. But one feels that he his unique voice on the Telecaster kind of overshadowed the fact that he could sing fine. Was that somebody playing? Who's playing? I could hear. Is that you, Mr. Bolton? Giving it some welly in the background. Oh, that's what I thought I could do. I thought I could hear somebody playing.
I think you got voices in your head again, Simon.
Oh dear.
Albert's made a comment here. Love the story about Roy telling someone that he showed Robbie Robertson how to do those squeals, but I showed him the wrong way.
Oh, damn. Imagine that, yeah. Oh, it wasn't like that, was it? No. Oh, dear.
No.
Oh, well. Oh, dear. Fantastic.
It was Arvin.
It was Arvin. Nice. Arvin, you're to blame. Typical.
Arvin, how are the Oilers going to go? Are they going to beat Florida?
Don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows yet.
He'll make a comment. He'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, are we going to choose 3 favourites and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hold on, guys. Okay, so I'll kick it off. So Keith Richards. So obviously, guys, any album, the Stones ever did, go and check it out. But for me, this album here is a good place to start. Sticky Fingers, Can't You Hear Me Knocking? One of the classic open G riffs. You got Brown Sugar on here, Brad, another classic open G riff, and a great album cover.
Yeah.
Andy Warhol designed cover.
That's for me. Brad?
For me, with Keith, I mean, you can't go past the intro to sort of like, for you want that Telecaster open G thing, that sort of honky tonk woman thing. But I mean, where do you start with Keith and the Rolling Stones? It's very hard for me. I mean, back in my early days of learning guitar, I really tried so hard to learn how to play Start Me Up in standard tuning. And it just made no sense to me whatsoever. On my Stratocaster, trying to get it to sound, it just didn't have the same thing. I've always thought, for example, with Keith Richards, Brown Sugar, Happy, Start Me Up. Look, there's just so many. I think you Sticky Fingers is probably Exile on Main Street. That you can't go wrong, guys, with any of that. I love Black and Blue. I love the Black and Blue album. I know sometimes people say certain things about that. I love that record, and there's something about the intro to that song, Give Me Shelter. It just gives me shivers every single time I listen to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't pick 3 guys for Keith. Sorry, I could go on forever. But
I think you just picked 3 examples, don't you?
Yes,
but they're out of a list of hundreds.
Yeah.
But you picked 3.
Look, Expensive Winos. I found his solo stuff was remarkable. I liked that. Just loved that grit. The I don't know. Look, I'll stop there because I'll go on for hours with Keith, Uncle Keith. I call him.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, completely. I agree with you. Gimme Shelter, of course. Atmospheric. Water. Jumping Jack Flash. It's another classic open tuning Keith riff. I've played that for hundreds of years in bands and stuff. And Start Me Up. I mean, but you're right. Where do you want to go? Brown Sugar? Do you want to go Honky Tonk Women? That thing where he's just, I've seen that clip on YouTube where, where he's just pulling his guitar around with the two strings, and just like yanking that guitar around playing it. It's like, it's amazing. You can't get more iconic than that, really, as a thing. But I mean, everything really, isn't it? If you want to go albums, Exile, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, but anything else you care to choose, especially the latest stuff, it all has Keith open tuning imprint on it. So you take your pick, but a master, and and that unique 5-string just gives him that unique tone and approach to the guitar that's amazing. But yeah, take your pick out of those, anybody, but investigate his whole catalogue because it's all fantastic.
Yeah. I'm just going to, before I jump on to the next part of the show, guys, Mission RD1 saying Tumbling Dice. I think it's capoed at
Yes.
Great. And I remember, Brad, when I learnt that, when I could play that in open G and I got that riff nailed down, I thought, how sometimes you spend the rest of that day or that week or that moment when you've nailed something, you go, yes, I've untapped the secret to the universe.
Yes.
Fantastic. Look at that. Albert Arthur Parsons mentions the name Mary Whitehouse. There we are. First time for everything. She did not approve. Disgusting. Nice one, Albert. Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, Tumbling Dice is that opening bit of thunder. Fantastic. But as we said, take your pick. Choose your fave.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm just going to get rid of that comment. Great show. Great comments from folks in the chat too, guys. This week, isn't it? We always appreciate hanging out with everybody. Tony, always good to see you.
Yeah.
Real blues fan, isn't he? Boy.
Yeah. Tony's out and about. Yes.
Albert, thank you guys for joining us. So, the conversation I had with Carl around Albert Collins was a conversation about this album here, Brad and Simon, Showdown.
Showdown.
By Albert Collins, Robert Cray, and Johnny Copeland. And I've made reference to you guys that in 2010, I decided to spend the rest of my life studying, learning, and talking and reading the blues. And it was around this period that I discovered this album. And Brad, I listened to this album non-stop for about months, Brad.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, if you want to go and check out what Albert is doing, but also with two other, so you're getting 3 for the price of 1 on this show, Simon.
Yes,
it's a hat trick. You can't go wrong.
This is a great album, and I know Hugh has mentioned a couple of times in shows that we've done, guys, that we should rank this album. So it's on the list. It's definitely on the list.
I'm surprised we haven't done it already. I'm surprised we haven't done it already.
We're spreading out, aren't we? We're spreading out from our British Electric Blues kind of, central tenant into American blues and stuff, and it means we've got just a few more albums to rank and enjoy. So this is all terrible.
Well, it's all like part of the family. Really.
Absolutely, yeah.
100%. And
but my point is that we started in a particular place. We're not doing it chronologically. We started in a particular place, Fleetwood Mac, whatever, and we're going out from there. That we're using that as our central point to go out and go forward and go back, rather than chronology thing.
And thank you, Jim, for introducing Tony to our community too. So thank you for that. Brad, your choices, bro.
Are we talking for Albert Collins now?
Collins, yeah.
Albert Collins.
I went backwards. I knew of Albert Collins, through history, and I understood who he was, and I'd listened to his music. But I went backwards with Albert Collins from Gary Moore's album, Still Got the Blues, Too Tired. I think that just that dual guitar playing and trading off each other, I just love it. It gives me a smile on my face every time I hear it. Live blues, Gary Moore, where they're playing together and they do that song together. That's electric. I mean, it's phenomenal. You can't go past that. That's Albert Collins playing with him in London live at his best, just on fire. But I think he's got an instrumental song called Frosty, and that's one that I think you would have to introduce if someone wants to know about Albert Collins and never really listened to him before. That would be one. I ain't drunk. There's something about that one too.
Yeah, just drinking. Yes.
There's a bunch of Albert Collins stuff that but I think they're three pretty good ones. I mean, you picked the one that I thought as well, Andrew. So, I mean, that for me, Albert Collins will always, and maybe go check out that footage of Albert Collins on 24 Nights. Eric Clapton's 24 Nights. I think that was really cool. Albert Collins is one of those guys that you can listen to and put on like in the background while you've got people around, and entertaining. And Ice Pick, that's the other one. Ice Pick.
Yeah.
That song, that's another one. But you can always go put him on in the background and go, who's that? Like if they're not for me, they love it. Yeah. Because there's a bit of everything in there. There's funk, there's slow blues, there's blues, it's everything. So I'll stick with those for now. I could go on a bit more, but I'll stick with those.
Good choices, brother.
I think I agree with you. Frosty, I think his instrumental breakthrough definitely, definitely one to listen to. I Ain't Drunk, absolutely. That kind of hard grooving blues is fantastic. And I picked out If Trouble Was Money as well. It's a much slower blues thing, showcasing his expressive vibrato and vocal phrasing on the guitar. So that's really good.
Yep.
In terms of albums, I think Ice Picking absolutely as a sort of Showdown and Frostbite as well. That kind of the live one, a showcase of his live, with horns as well. Great sort of horn section, and doing that kind of classic BB King live at the Regal vibe, with by having the horn section and things. And that completely is, if you go and listen to Joe Bonamassa live at the Greek, that it's that as well, very much so. That so those would be my three top albums: Ice Picking, Showdown, and Frostbite as well from there. But so fantastic choices, and he's a great player. Andrew?
Awesome. So we're on to
Mr. Roy Buchanan.
Mr. Buchanan. So the Rock Professor already mentioned the documentary that's on YouTube about his life. Go and check that out. That's phenomenal, and you'll get a full appreciation of where he's coming from. I think it's just a great documentary. And also, guys, I got this definitive collection not long after I discovered him, and there are some good definitive collections out there, and there are others which aren't too good that miss out a couple of eras or a couple of key songs. But from my perspective, this definitive collection here, which is available everywhere, it's probably a good way to start if you want to capture everything that Roy's done right through his career. Good place to start.
Yeah, I agree.
Brad.
Roy, for me, well, I reckon The Messiah will come. I've always loved the way he plays on that. That's the next level. I mean, that has, for me, a real, I don't know, haunting sort of thing going on there. It's wonderful. You got to check that out if you've never had a good listen to that. It's emotional. Roy's Blues and Green Onions live versions there, blues funky sort of thing going on there. Sweet Dreams. That one has like all the volume sort of swells in it. Yeah, there's a bunch there, but I actually think that definitive collection there is probably a good place to start, Andrew, for anyone who's trying to discover Roy's music. I think that's a great one. And I'm going to check that documentary out. I haven't actually seen that, so yeah.
Cheers, bro.
Simon.
So, well, I mean, yeah, because it's where I came in. You know, Sweet Dreams is definitely on my list. You know, on my list to one song that's, you know, it's a beautiful thing, beautiful haunting version, you know, of the Don Gibson song, and you know, it's the first time I'd ever heard any of that. You know, any of that swells and things, just brilliant. And you know, was playing it yesterday, still absolutely fantastic. Yeah, still I think. How'd you do that? Quite a lot. But I mean, in terms of albums, I think his first two albums as well. I think the first one and the second album was fantastic. You know, a bit more refined than the debut, but a bit more blues and a bit more jazz. But could I say 8 songs and 33 minutes is good enough for Roy. It's good enough for anybody else. Messing about with these 70 minutes. Well, you know, it because 33 minutes is enough. You know, it absolutely is. Please. And also a live album, if you want a live album, Livestock from 75. You know, it's got Further On Out the Road and I'm Evil on it as well as kind of blues classic things, which he does fantastically. So that's the kind of live album that picks him, if you want to pick at him. But you know, his catalogue is great, and there's lots of stuff on YouTube and things lots of live albums and things. So pick them out; they're all fantastic. You know, and he's a fantastic player. Young Mr. Buchanan.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, well done, Simon. Check out anything of him playing live. There's a couple of great clips of him playing live in the 70s with that with his Fender amp turned up, and he's got a whole heap of young people sitting down, and they're in absolute awe of him playing. He's got that Telecaster on a thread, bro.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, in his flat cap and his kind of tweed jacket and stuff. I know.
Yes.
It looks wildly incongruous with the times, doesn't he? And the music he's playing.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
brilliant.
All these people are just sitting there, and they're young, and they're just gobsmacked.
Yeah. But he looks like somebody from another era, doesn't he? Just turned up.
He looks like the news agent.
Yeah. Oh dear. Lovely. Fantastic. Never judge a book by its cover, kids.
Never.
There we are. Never.
Never. That's back in the olden days, folks. If you don't know what a newsagent is,
black and white television.
You had to go down and buy the paper in your comics, your 2000 AD and your Star-Lord and your Warlord comics and all that. You had to go and get them from a newsagent.
Yeah, I used to get all my Guitar magazines.
What rubbish is that? Do you mean the Beano and the Dandy and the Topper? Yeah. Yes. 2000. What is that? Marvel comics. Yeah.
No, I never got into Marvel. Sorry.
I can remember. Sorry, we're now going to digress because we had somebody come to stay. He was a man called Joe Lloyd. He was the son of a great British folk collector called A.L. Lloyd, Bert Lloyd. It was the great English folk collector of English folk songs, and his son Joe came to stay with. And he had Marvel comics. This is in the mid-60s. So I'm like 7 years old, and I've got these Marvel, I'm reading about the Silver Surfer and the Fantastic Four. Let me tell you, it's, they were fantastic, color in a black and white world, as and the adverts at the back of them for, I don't know, clothes and weird, in X-ray glasses and stuff and things that you could buy from America. Amazing.
Yeah.
So back in the days.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. We've got 20 people, and at one stage we had about 28 or something like that hanging out with us.
Wow.
So always a pleasure getting together with you guys. Next week we're going to be doing probably the last show like this before we get into the rankings. We're going to do an acoustic players. We're going to pick 3 acoustic blues players to talk about, and then the week after that we'll be into the rankings. So as usual on the channel, we do things back to front. There's probably an argument. So why didn't you pick the acoustic blues players first? But we don't do things like that.
No,
that's too easy, isn't it?
Yes, we're not doing that. That would be living up to expectations. Something we've singularly failed to do on this channel.
Yeah, we'll be great,
right.
Alan. It will be great, and we'll talk about who we're going to pick on that, and we'll let you know if you hit the notifications button, because we haven't finalised that. Probably there'll definitely be one person, I suppose, that the 3 of us will agree on. I'm sure Robert Johnson will have to be on there.
Yeah.
But we'll have a conversation about who the other 2 would be. So we look forward to spending some time doing that, and then we'll be looking at the progress for the Rock Professor, and we'll be ranking the tracks before you know it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're. I was going to say something maybe a little bit rude there, but we're pretty deep into Jimmy Page and the Black Crows. I think we've got to come back to that probably first before we start anything new.
Yeah. Oh, that's no surprise, folks. See, yeah. So that's that will be the next ranking. The tracks will be that wonderful project, Simon, that was on the list about 4 years ago, I think, and we finally got to it. Okay?
Yeah. Well, the repackaging and all that. So it's great, but we won't go on too much more about it at this point. We'll do it a bit later.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Simon, for hanging out with us. And if you're watching on a replay and you've got to an hour 23 here on the channel, thank you, as ever, for joining us. The Rock Professor is going to do a shout-out to all you kind and awesome folk in the chat. But the people that are watching on replay, if you could remember to share our channel, please, on your social media platforms, and go and see our friends on our channels page there. You'll see a whole host of friends that we support. Go and please subscribe to them, and we'll be back with 3 acoustic giants next week, Simon.
Ooh, 3 acoustic giants. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. More things to delve into. Okay, so we've had Ellen on. Thanks, Ellen, for every week. Your support is so much appreciated by us, so thank you so much for that. Greg Roberts, Jim, nice to see you, Greg. Haven't seen you for a while. I hope you're well. Please go. Just under 50, Jim. Great to see you as well, Jim. Thanks for joining. Tony as well. Tony went to see Bonnie Raitt the other day. It was fantastic, apparently.
Wow.
Well done, Tony. Johnny Heartbreaker. Thanks, Johnny, for staying up and being a night bird for us. That's your support is much appreciated too. Arvin, as well. Thanks, Arvin. As well. Need to get back to English place names, messing about. Got a few more. Mission RD100. Thanks, Mission. Albert Arthur Parsnips. Fantastic name. Thanks, guys, for joining, and your comments. Always great comments. And always, there's always something interesting going on in the chat. So thank you all for that. Jazz, Tony. Do we have anybody else further up? Greg, Jim. Mission Phil Byers. Phil, thank you as well, Phil, for joining.
Hey, Phil.
And I think that's everybody. Nelson. Oh, Nelson as well. Nelson Rodriguez. Thanks, Nelson. Making Lego for his daughter. Things we get dragged into. Well done, Nelson. Here were 1,000 pieces. Been at it for some time. Yeah.
Good on him.
Great. Johnny Heartbreaker. So I think that's everybody who made a comment. So thank you very much all for joining. Fantastic to see you. Thanks for the great comments. And yeah, we'll see you next week for 3 acoustic giants. Take it easy. Have a good week, everyone. Stay safe.
Peace.